know you're gonna dig this.
Welcome to the End Zone Club, where we have conversations that are designed to push you from walking in potential to fulfilling your purpose. And introducing our host, Anthony Mitchell.
Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Anthony Mitchell. Just wanted to say that we have some company today, meaning I got a special guest who's going to keep it hot, flavorful. But before I introduce him, I do have to say, whatever platform you were streaming this podcast from, please give us a like, a share, a rate, a subscription. Help us to get this content out to the four corners of the world. But before we do so, we got to hear from our sponsors. So stay tuned.
Hey guys, this is Basically Tisha from Basically Tisha. Listen, you guys will love my content. Please join me on Facebook.com/Basically Tisha or TikTok /@Basically Tisha.
Hey, my beautiful people, if you're listening in now, do not touch that dial. This is your host, Anthony Mitchell, and I am coming at you live. Club podcast, where as always, we have conversations wrapped around things we know now, wrapped around things we wish we knew when we were younger. And with that said, I have a heavyweight special guest that's here in the studio with us today. So I'm going to hop in the passenger seat and allow my special guest to come to the forefront and introduce himself.
Ooh, thank you. I don't know how I can come out of that one. Thanks for having me on, I appreciate it. My name is Steven Leapley, and I am I'm chuckling as I say that because I just had this conversation about being a motivational person. And so every time somebody says that, the first thing that pops into my mind is Chris Farley when in that skit from Saturday Night Live when he says, "I am Matt Stevens, a motivation." So I feel like I do that a lot. Like because I have 7 kids, or actually I have 8 kids. And so I do that all the time when just to try to get them out of bed. I just sit down there and climb over their bed as their eyes wake up, and I'm like, "My name is your father, and I am your motivational speaker. You need to get your butt out of bed now."
I mean, now. I'm laughing at you, Mr. Leapley, because my wife and I, we are parents to 6 kids, and there's not many groups that I've been in that someone has had more than me. So I have to touch on that in a moment. But with that said, I know you're a motivational speaker. You're a guy of many talents. You wear many hats. I want you to start at square one and just give us a piece of your story.
Well, I wish I could say I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I wasn't. So I grew up in the Midwest, in the suburbs of Chicago mostly, and I got out of high school, and that's what everybody does. And I went to community college, and I was there for a semester, and I thought, this is like high school with smoke breaks. It just made no sense to me. So I joined the military, and ended up spending 10 years in the military as a Navy corpsman, and got my paramedic license in there, and then 6 years after the military, I was also in the medical field as a medic, as an administrator, and that's where I really kind of cut my teeth on a lot of what I do today, which is primarily ghostwriting. But in that sense, I was speaking a lot. I was on a circuit, and I didn't put this in my bio when you and I were chatting earlier, but there was a season where I got too big for my britches, and as a medic, there's an old saying that paramedics walk on water. Well, I used to say I invent the water that I walk on.
Wow.
Because my ego was so huge, and that got me into some addictions that didn't like it, which almost cost me my family. I ended up in a rehab for 7 months.
Wow.
When and coming out of that, I transitioned out of medicine and started working in the corporate world. Worked for a Fortune 50 company for a while as a trainer, speaker in there, and that process. And then 2008 happened, and the economy crashed. And of course, when you are in the human resources division, and the economy goes, that's the first kind of group of people that go, is all the what they call ancillary services, I guess, of not important people, although we are important. And so that led me corporate field and into basically going into business for myself. And and we went back to school. My wife and I actually went back to college. I got bachelor's degree, master's degree, and we were gonna head down this route of wanting to start a church, and then that didn't end up going the way we wanted it to. But in that process of kind of figuring out where I'm at now, and I ended up landing at a little bit of coaching, but mostly just landing into copywriting, into ghostwriting. That process brought me, getting to that process was a really heavy conversation. So I have, like I said, I have 8 kids. My oldest is from my first marriage, which being in the military, my wife likes to call my first deployment. and so and then my current wife and I, we've been married 25 years and have 7 kids. And so when we were, I think we had 7 after we had our 6th. Our oldest became an adult, and she was like, I'm not raising these kids on my own. This next group, because we had our first 3 was under 3 years, and then it was like every 4 years we had another one, which are all surprises, and that's a story in and of itself. But we just went through this season of I'm not going to do this on my own, and so I had to find something that I could do at home, and copywriting was brilliant because I was a really good writer. And so I kind of just stumbled into that, and we stumbled into kind of this minimalistic living. The last 2 homes that we were in, one flooded, actually both of them flooded, and we were just like, we're tired of this. And so my wife had this crazy idea of moving into an RV. She said, can we move into an RV? And I was like, no. And and so she finally talked me into it. And we've been living full time in an RV since 2017. And that's really helped me like just reduce all of this excess stuff that we have. And really over the last, since then, it's been a process of me learning how to really balance life, business, family, and realizing what's important and how to invest in what's important without all the bells and whistles.
Mr. Leapley, I have to stop right there because there's a lot to unpack. And I think it's probably something that a lot of us in our younger years, growing older, really have to fine tune. And I want to highlight how you talked about what's most important. I hear the growth of a guy that goes from basically being a paramedic. A lot of times people's lives in your hands. I'm sure during that time in the Navy, you've had some dire situations, but now you're seeing less is more. What have you found to be like some of the most important things in life as you've gotten older and transitioned into this step of your journey?
Ooh, I've really learned the importance of self-care. And I know that's a huge thing these days, and you can go off on this self-improvement tangent, and it can become real selfish. And but I've really learned how I have to take care of my well-being, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, nutritional. Um, and when I take the time and effort, and I put in the time and effort to take care of myself in through that lens of well-being, then it helps me think clearer when I show up for my family, which is for me the next most important thing. And it's tough as especially as guys. We live a traditional kind of life, where I work, my wife wants to stay home, we've homeschooled our kids, and and so just being clear in my own head helps me be clearer in what the priorities are. Um, I read somewhere one time, and this, you know, there was back when we thought about starting a church. I was reading this book where it was like, the traditional priorities, of that is like, God's first, then your wife is second, then your family's third, then you're fourth, and then everybody comes out of that, and it's really kind of linear in that sense. And I read like, as this was like a church planting handbook, and there was this thing. It was like on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. If you're the pastor, your priority can't be, I'm going to take my wife on a date. Your priority is this, and so you can maintain those linear priorities, and still be like, if you're working 60 hours a week, my wife is really good at reminding me when I don't do this, but really good at reminding me, like, I could be gone for 60 hours a week and she can still feel like the number one priority. But it starts with me ensuring that my well-being, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, nutritional, is on par, so that I can show up effectively and clearly.
I do have to applaud you, because also being a father of a big home, I realize how important it is to prioritize and be intentional with your time, because to me, there's a sense of aim when you're very clear about your intentions. However, one intention I do need to know a little bit more about is, how did you get your whole family locked and sync with going towards this minimalist mentality?
Well, I wish I could take all the credit. It's actually probably 90% my wife who kind
I
of
love
pushed us towards that.
it. I love it.
And I wish I could be like, yes, I did all this, but no, she, our wives are such a mirror of us, and I'm blessed to have an amazing wife who keeps me on track, and her desire is to see me lead well in our home. And so, it's a showing up every day of just remembering what's important. And I think when we have the big house and all the cars and all the stuff, it can be such a distraction. And so as we start to pull those away, it helps us see what's more important. And I think different.
Sorry, guys. It looks like my guest got disconnected for a few moments, but as we're waiting for him to tap back in, I got to highlight something he was actually just talking about, and that's just the distractions that comes with much. Most of our society is built on this idea that the more you have, the more blessed you are. But sometimes people don't realize that the more you're chasing after, the more that's in your hands, the more responsibility that comes with that. And with that responsibility comes weight, because now you have obligations with the more that you have in your hands. So if you are missing the underlying theme to the minimalist portion of our conversation, I think it's almost deeply religious to hear someone decluttering their life enough where they can enjoy what they've got. I know a lot of people, and I've been through this myself, that with the more God has given you or allowed you to have, you feel like you need more provision. You need more expenditures. You need more bills with the more you have. I think that's a very, very, very dangerous approach. With that said, I'd like to stop for a moment, jump to commercial, and we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. This is Andre Truitt, representative for Just Gifted Clothing Brand. If you have individual talent of any kind, we are talking to you. Join this clothing brand that has built a community of people that encourages others to use their gifts and talents. Man, we are the fastest growing brand that you haven't heard of yet. To find out what we're really about, just go to justgiftedclothingbrand.com. Let me spell that out for you. JUSGIFTED clothingbrand.com. One more time for you. JUSGIFTED clothingbrand.com. Talent in any way, you're just gifted.
All right, guys, this is Anthony Mitchell again. We are back from commercial. I have Mr. Steven Leapley back on the line. Sorry for the disconnection, sir, but I was very intrigued by what we were talking about with the minimalist lifestyle. If you don't mind, can you pick back up where we left off?
Yes. So I can't remember exactly where we were, but we were in creating a minimalistic lifestyle. I was realizing that the stuff that we had, just having more and bigger, isn't always better because it just creates distraction with us. And the more distracted I found that the more stuff I had, the more distracted I was getting. And as much as I wanted to believe that the stuff was actually drawing us together, it wasn't. You can learn a lot about someone when you have to, you get married and now you're sharing a bedroom with someone. We live in a 36-foot travel trailer with 4 slide outs, and we have a bunkhouse. And so all of our kids share a bunkhouse room. And, we've had places where we've tried to rent when we had earlier kids, and they were like, you can't put all your kids in one room. That's child abuse. I'm like, how's it child abuse if the bedroom is to sleep in? That's what it's designed for. Like, it's not designed to be lived in. It's designed to be slept in. And our kids, we exchanged things with experiences and tried to get outside as much and that we could. And, it's funny because now we live in this trailer, and I have 4 of my 8 kids are adults. So 4 of them are out of the house. So I just have the younger 4 in from 16 down to 3. And so we have just created this space of things to do outside, so that the trailer is really nothing more than, it's our home. Yeah. But the room is a place to sleep. We have a farm now. And we live on a private land, and I've got chickens and goats and dogs and quails and a vegetable garden, and it's it's those experiences. Like my 8-year-old had the experience last year a few months ago when we butchered our first set of meat birds, and so. Like, how many 8-year-olds can say, yeah, I know how to butcher a chicken?
Not many. Play Roblox and video games. Yeah.
And we still, our kids still play, our kids still play a little bit of video games, but we monitor them. And, I found that the less stuff I have, the more I'm able to invest into my kids. And the more I can invest into them mentally.
I want to add this in to just as a carrot to what you're saying. I think a lot of times we as fathers think that our greatest ability is being available for provision, but sometimes provision extends more beyond keeping the lights on. You know, contrary to popular belief, fathers also play an integral part in developing kids, you know, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We have a part. So when I hear a father talk in line that says, I also get a chance to invest in my kids, it's like you understand your position well. I just wanted to applaud you for that as you were sharing this portion of your story.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's you know, it's crazy because that's not something that has been since day one for me. It's been something that's really in the last probably 4 years that I've really kind of come into clarity with, so to speak. And that's one of those, it's almost like it's still a stigma, like mental health is still a stigma. And I think active, present fathers are still a stigma, because we get to this point where it's like, you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't spent much time with my kids, so you know, I guess I don't have time. I guess I guess that time is over. And the cool thing is our children, as I'm sure that you know, like our children are really resilient, and they're really grace giving, especially when you come to them and you're like, I screwed up, or I have my oldest is like, why didn't you have all of this stuff when we were young?
Exactly.
It's like, well, you were the first one, so you were the experiment.
And it's a learning process.
and it's a learning process. You know, my 24-year-old was like, Dad, you never taught me about Star Wars or football, and he's like, these are amazing things. I'm like, you only wanted to skateboard, and so rather than trying to force what I wanted onto you, I just let you go and do what you wanted to do, and which was skateboarding. And so we spent hours and days. I remember being in grad school, and I would take him to the skate park, and he would skateboard, and I would sit there and write my papers and do my research at the skate park with him. And it was cool. And then eventually he got me out on the skateboard. And so he appreciated that, but it's those opportunities that we have, like, had we had, the big house, or had we had not focusing on living smaller, I would have been at home working, or, the wife would have been taking him more so to the skate parks than I would have. And just, like they say, like, proximity helps. It's when you're in the same house, when you're in the same town, it's easier to get together and be connected. And what I found for us, minimally, is even the smaller place that we have, the more connected we get.
Exactly.
And it was kind of funny, because what we tried, I think in 2017 is when we went full time. 2012 was our first experiment. We were both doing undergrad, and we had a moment. We had like a 3-month opportunity to kind of travel, and we had bought this old Class C RV to try to travel in. And we traveled in it for about a month, and none of the kids wanted to leave. They just wanted to be, this is our first time out of a house. And so they just wanted to be glued to the 13-inch TV to use the Nintendo Wii. Like, that's all they wanted to do. And we tried these things. We kept trying different things. We couldn't get them out. And I remember we had to come back home for a wedding or something. And we downsized from a 26-foot travel trailer to a pop-up tent trailer. So literally the only thing you could do in a pop-up tent trailer is sleep. and that was kind of the start of us exploring how to do things outside of the home together as a family. And I think that was, for my wife, that was definitely this aha. We could do this minimalistic kind of thing. And she was like, I'm tired of cleaning the house and trying, and, you know, and I was a paramedic. So I would come home and you know, this cleanliness thing, I was in the military. So I would come home and I wouldn't care about anything else other than the kitchen being clean. And my wife was like, the kitchen is the last thing I'm doing. And I would literally come home and I remember walking over piles of clothes and toys and being mad that the kitchen wasn't clean. She's like, you can walk over all this other stuff. She's like, maggots don't grow on toys. You know, like, you know, not that we had that, but that was my mentality of like this could happen. And man, breaking out of that and living smaller has helped me be more present with my kids. But yet I still had to learn. It was still a process for me. I wish it was an immediate boom. But it's
Right.
been a process. It's been a process, and I'm glad for that, because it's part of my own story. But it's, you know, and we all have our story. But two, it really helps. It's really helped me in my business too, just because I've had these experiences, so I can show up and help other people, you know, navigate different areas of life that they're going through.
You know, I'm glad you say all that. So I'm going to quickly, because we have just a few moments left here on this platform, but I want to connect a couple of dots in as short of a time period as possible. But hearing your story is really invigorating, because it's different than just a cookie cutter everyday. Even as I call a lot of the subdivision homes, they're left and right hand homes, because they all look just alike.
Mm-hmm.
Your story is quite unique. How do you take your story and draw others that you work with as a ghostwriter and teaching people how to tell their stories? Like, what are some things that you do with that? And I want to talk about that a little bit, because I'm intrigued, because we've always felt like everybody has a story, but sometimes it's hard to tell your story. Or, you know, it's almost like when we were in college, when you have to do an introductory speech and just talk about yourself for 2 minutes. That was the hardest speech, because you don't know how and where to start. Take us on that journey very quickly.
I think it comes down to helping people figure out where their foundation is, and once they know where their foundation is, then you can kind of build up. I call them like pillars. You know, there's basically 4 pillars of a man, which is the king, warrior, mentor, and friend kind of pillar. And if you have a strong foundation, you can build those up. And so when I help people tell stories, it's walking through, okay, which of these 4 pillars, which one is solid, which one needs to be maybe rebuilt or strengthened, or focused on more. But it's also, you know, those pillars are also like bonsai trees, in the sense of,
Okay, wax on, wax off.
yeah, I'm gonna go Karate Kid. I'm old school. I'm going Karate Kid on you. Totally, because for a bonsai tree, you know, to flourish, it has to be continually picked and poked and prodded and cut and shaped and trimmed. And that's the same thing with our lives. We have to. It's a constant. It's not a battle. It's just an opportunity to constantly prod and shape and mold into what we want. And so when I take people on their journeys through telling their stories, it's a process of walking through that. Like, so what are your foundational pillars? And then there's the passions. Like, what's passionate to you? What do you love to do? What do you enjoy to do? Because I feel like, for me, I feel like God created everybody uniquely, and we all have a purpose. And so usually what our passions are really what purposed us. And so really helping people see their purposes and their passions, and then their positionings of every position that we're in, every season, every circumstance, every event is there for a reason. there's always like, it's you either learn or you either grow or you learn, right? In a circumstance.
Correct.
And I believe that, and I believe that deeply in the sense of we don't know who and when we're going to impact or influence someone else, and simply sharing our stories is a way to impact and influence others. Sure, you can become a writer and try to become a best-selling author, and sometimes in doing that, in telling your story, that's what you become. But really, telling the stories it's almost like in the military. Especially if you come back from war, there's a lot of post-traumatic stress that we have, and so I have found that actually helping people write their stories helps get rid of their post-traumatic stress, whether it's military or whether it's non-military. It doesn't, where your stress comes from doesn't matter. But if you have trauma in your life, sometimes just merely telling your story gets it out there and helps reduce that trauma and that stress trauma in our own lives. And then somebody's going to read it, see a snippet, hear you talking about it, and they're going to be like, that's me.
Connect. Mm-hmm.
And then that gives us an opportunity to say, hey, this is what I did. This is my, what's your story? And so I just have the ability, a gifting to hear someone's story and be able to step into it. Somebody called me the other day the Jim Carey of ghostwriting, because of just how
Okay.
just how I get inside somebody. I can get inside someone's head, and really kind of bring out what they've done in their life that's been able to that can impact and influence others.
I'm listening to all of this, and I wish I had more time, because I feel like we have gotten to the point in the conversation where I was like, you know what? I was going to put them on the spot and let them pull my story out a little bit. But I tell you, that will be for another day. But I know I told you that I got you questions.
Yes.
Right. I was a little, I don't want to say honest or dishonest or not honest, but I always, before I let my guests go, I throw a curveball question at them. And with your permission, I've got a curveball question that will not get you canceled.
Go for it.
But my question is, what's something you know now you wish you knew when you were younger?
Ooh, that's not that big of a curveball question, but it is. It is when you're not prepared, right? Man, that everything happens for a reason.
I like that. With that said, sir, undoubtedly there are going to be people that are listening to today's episode and will want to connect more with just some of what you experienced, as well as drawing their own stories out. How can people find you and just connect with you more on an intimate level?
They can reach me on my website, which is leaplyenterprises.com. Or I'm super active. I'm on all the socials, and pretty much everything is Steven Leapley. I'm super active on LinkedIn, and I'm also active on Facebook. I think my Instagram handle is Steven Leapley Official, because I got hacked one time and I wanted to make it official again.
That sounds about right. But I tell you what, I'm going to send you a LinkedIn request, and I would like to continue more of this conversation in due time. But sir, listen, I have to get you back on this platform when things slow down a little bit after the holiday season, because
absolutely
100 miles an hour, and militarily right now we are slammed. However, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share with our guests before we transition off of today's episode?
Every one of us has a story, and don't be afraid to tell it. That's what I got.
I like that. And guys, you've heard it here first. If you can, go over to one of the social media sites that he has referenced, and please go follow Mr. Leapley. Like, share, rate, subscribe this podcast. Get this content
in the ears of your friends. I believe it'll be a blessing. And until next time, this is the End Zone Club, where we have conversations that are designed to push you from walking in potential to actually fulfilling your purpose. Be blessed.